that the provision of Section 14 shall not apply to any government department or any public institution which is non-profit making and whole financed by the government. And therefore, some NGO might use that section and assume that they don't have responsibility to pay SDL, but this has to be interpreted along with the Income Tax Act for the NGOs to enjoy the exemption. So this is all I wanted to share with you as an introduction to our discussion. So May, thank you for the time. I would like to bring the floor to you. So
thank you so much, Berthasia, for that presentation. So for everyone who is in the room right now, this is just the opening of the presentation. She has taken us through the general responsibilities and obligations of NGOs with regards to taxation in Tanzania. So I have seen a couple of people, Vincent and everybody who have raised their hands. I hope you have questions. So this is the time for us to ask questions, clarifications, and if you have any additions with regards to taxation of NGOs in Tanzania. But before I open the room, Berthasia, I would like to ask you a question. When you were presenting about responsibilities of NGOs, you said they are required to file annual returns as per the Income Tax Act and as how businesses usually do it. So if an NGO, its calendar year is December, then they have to file before June of the coming year. So let's say if it was December, they have to file before 30th June this year, yeah? So my question is, what if an NGO was registered last year, but due to different circumstances, maybe they were expecting some funds, they did not get any funds, they did not do any activity that helped them generate income, are they still liable to file these returns, these annual returns? That's my first question. My second question, I would like you to touch a bit more about NGOs getting charitable status. Are there any rules, maybe in terms of time of operations? What documents do they need to prepare to file to the commissioner? So I would like you to touch a little bit more on how a person can get this charitable status ruling from the commissioner.
Okay, thank you so much, May, for your question contribution. Yes, as you have said, on the responsibility part for the NGO, the NGOs in Tanzania, they are required by the Income Tax Act to submit the annual returns. And this annual return is the annual return of income before 30th of June if their year is ending at December. But also they're supposed to submit or to file the estimate of income. Like at the beginning of the year, they should submit estimate as well, which shows the income that they expect to have at the end of that year, as well as the tax payable basing on that income. Even if it is nil, then they should also submit. So your question was on whether the NGO has received income, has not received income. Does this responsibility apply or not? My understanding is whether they have received the fund or not, that does not exempt them from that liability or that statutory duty of filing the return. They still have to submit estimate and the return of income at the end of the year. And also do the audit, prepare the financial statements, prepare the tax computation and tax and return of income, and submit accordingly, even if they don't have any income received during that year. To your second question on the charitable status, yes, they are. The Income Tax Act and the Tax Administration Act gives a guidance or at least some requirements that NGO has to fulfill for them to be considered for the charitable status. Among the things, they're supposed to have financial statement for the previous years, So when your question was asking about the period, I haven't seen specifically where the number of years is stated, but from the experience, I've seen the requirement whereby we do apply using financial statement for at least 3 years, which shows the NGO has been in practice and has been doing charitable activities. Apart from the audited financial statement that are provided as evidence for the charitable work that an NGO is doing, they should also submit the annual activities like report, which shows the activity that they are doing and the people that they are reaching and so on and so forth. Apart from that, I've also seen the NGO required to show that up to that point of application, they are also complying, because the charitable status is applicable prospective. Like once they get it, they start enjoying after getting it, not prior. So they have to show evidence that before being considered for charitable status, they have been complying with tax laws, including paying SDL, pay as you earn, in other laws, and submitting return accordingly. I hope that clarifies your question. If not, please let me know mine.
Yeah, it really does. Thank you so much for the answers. So we have two hands raised. We'll start with Ajay Sidpara. Ajay, Karibu, feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question. Then after Ajay, Ayub would be next. Karibu sana, Ajay.
Thank you all. Good evening. I just wanted to add one thing, rather not a question though, that there is a website for NGOs whereby you have to quarterly submit your reports of the activities that you are doing. And towards the end of the year, there is you have to upload your financials, which are uploaded through GRA with your acknowledgement of submission of accounts.
All right. Thank you so much for that addition. What is the name of the website? If you could.
I'll share it shortly. I don't have it offhand. I'll just check on my computer and share it shortly.
All right. Thank you so much, Ajay. Ayub, you raised your hand, Karibu.
For a wonderful presentation. I just have one question. What if the NGO has later on distributed that fund to other NGO? Will the fund be regarded as income to that NGO at the time of filing the annual returns? What is the best way of treatment actually from tax compliance point of view?
Yes, May, should I respond or we are taking other questions?
Yeah, maybe you can respond to that question. Then after your response, we welcome CEO Iceland. If I've not mispronounced your name, you'll be next to ask a question. But yes, Berthasia, please proceed with the response.
All right, thank you so much. When the NGO is receiving income, and that income is intended to be utilized through other NGOs, like, or maybe sub-grantees or other local implementing partners, the NGO which receives fund first will consider this as part of their grant or part of their overall revenue, and then the allocation to others, other sub-grantee or other NGO will form part of their expense if these NGOs are going to spend this money according to the MOU that they have, and then they are retiring back to this NGO. So the fact that it is channeled through the one NGO and it's going to be spent on the other NGO does not make it not to be income for that NGO or for that first NGO. That is my understanding.
Okay, I hope Ayub, your question is answered. If you have a follow-up question, maybe you would ask after CEO Iceland. CEO Iceland Karibu. You're welcome. For your question and addition, Karibu sana.
Right, thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Daniel actually from the University of Dodoma. I'm the CEO of Iceland Care Foundation. Ninapenda kutoa clarification kidogo. Kuna someone hapa amesema kwamba kuna a specific website ambapo tuna submit the reports. Actually hiyo ni account ya wizara. We call it NIS Information System. Kwa hiyo hii ni out of TRA. Sawa, tusiconfuse. Kule tunatoa reports za kila robo, miezi mitatu, then tunatoa annual report na hizo out reports na vitu kama hivyo. Ni specific website, ukienda Google unaandika nis.jamii, ni website ya Wizara ya Maendeleo ya Jamii, Jinsia na Makundi Maalum. Huko ndo NGO zote zinakuwa registered na tunapewa accounts kama za chuo. Kama mfano Dodoma tu au hiyo ya UDSM inakuwa hivyo. You log in with your email na namba yako. Kwa hiyo nitaka ni clarify hapo. Hiyo ni tofauti huyu AJ na hapo wengine hapa down wameuliza. So that NIS.jamii NGO Information System.
Okay, asante.
Allow me to add on what CEO Island said. Yeah, I totally agree with him. And just to add, when the NGO is applying for the charitable status to TRA, they're supposed to submit the activity report, which shows the activity that they have done. So the report that the NGO is submitting to registrar of NGO through the NIS Yamis system should be the one that are also submitted to TRA. So we are referring to the same documents, but to TRA you submit for charitable status application, while those reports should also be submitted according to the NGO Act to the registrar of NGOs.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, so we are still open for questions. Ayub, you have raised again your hand. Karibu, we encourage also other members who have questions or additions or any clarifications that we want. This is the right time. As I said in the introduction, for those who joined in late, Madam Berthasia has been in this field for over a decade. And if I say over a decade, I'm not doing it justice. It's almost 15 years. I just don't know how to say 2 decades minus 5. I'm not sure, but she has so much experience in this area. She has served as a director of Under the Same Sun, charitable registered organization in Canada, but also an NGO in Tanzania for so many years. So she understands this field very much. So if you have any questions with regards to tax and compliance, this is the right time. I really encourage you. And there is no question that is not, it's either too small or not in the right area. This is the right area. So just ask any questions. I believe you are here because you want to learn and you have your doubts. It will be a very good platform for you to leave this meeting with something that you have gained. So I really encourage everybody to ask a question. Don't feel shy or anyway. So Ayub, Karibu, then we'll have Angel. After Angel, we'll have AJ. Ayubu, Karibu.
Okay, asante May. Sorry, Berthasia. I just want to get the best way presentation, then advances for facilitating the NGO of whether should be reported kwenye payroll of prospective employees on the organization. What is the best way for somewhere issue documentation? How can you advise on that? Sorry.
So your voice was a bit lost at the beginning. If May have gotten it right, please repeat, or you can rephrase your question.
Yeah, I couldn't get his question either. His internet was breaking. So can you please repeat your question?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. The issue is Facilitation allowance, we can say. The NGO conducted an activity and there is no people who come to the, to attend the meeting or the activity. And they get paid some money to cover their transport or whatever, just to attend that particular activity. And now the NGO declares those as expenses at the time of filing the final return to TRI. What is the best way actually to avoid issue of the best way of presentation for whether for pay or to get allowed as per Section 11 of the Income Tax Act? I just want to get some insight from that.
Okay, thank you so much, Ayub. I hope you have written down that question, Madam Berthasia. We can take a question. Okay, we can take a question from Angel and then Ajay, then you will respond to these 3 questions. Angel, you're welcome. Karibu.
Thank you. Can you hear me? May you please confirm?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. So, thank you for the presentation, Berthasia. So I would like to pick your brain on this issue because I think one of the most complex issues facing NGOs is the issue of deferred revenue and advanced project funds. For example, an NGO, when they receive a fund, let's say on October, that is supposed to be utilized for maybe 2 years, and then the financial year ends on December, then they have to carry over funds to the next year and report it as deferred revenue in the financial statement. But this is a challenge when it comes to TRI audits because they do not allow the issue of deferred revenue. They actually add it back when they're calculating the income tax, corporate tax. They actually advise that all the funds should be utilized by the end of the year, or they should be returned back to the donor and then requested again at the beginning of the year. So I would like to pick your brain. How do you actually treat this issue before the NGO is registered for charitable? And mind you, I've had an experience where there's some NGOs that do charitable activities, but they do not fall in the category of Section 64(8). So the commissioner usually refuses to grant them the private ruling. So how do they treat this scenario of deferred revenue? Thank you.
Thank you, Angel, for that amazing question. Ajay, Karibu, you raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Meg. Does the NGO require to have an EFT machine? Though they are not taxable and they do not charge any VAT, because an NGO can receive donations from various departments or various community members or business people who are running down their projects. So some people, when they ask that, does your NGO have an EFT? We say no, but is it required by law to have an EFT machine?
Wow, asante for that question. I'm curious kujua pia kwenye hilo la EFT na NGOs. Berthasia, this is your floor. Thank
you so much, May. So let's respond to both questions, all the 3 questions, starting with the one from Ayub. Ayub had asked if there is a facilitation allowance paid to people who attend the meeting, and then how should an NGO account for that facilitation allowance for it to be whether tax allowable for tax deduction or not. My understanding, or let's share my experience, my understanding is the facilitation allowance, first of all, it will be challenged to judge it as just facilitation allowance without understanding clearly circumstances which led to those payments and amount. So there is reasonability and other justification which needs to be considered to say whether it will be allowed or not allowed and how it will be presented. However, now with an assumption that maybe it's paid to participants invited from outside, and this facilitation allowance, its amount is justifiable to show that maybe it helps them for transport or meals, or it helps them to be able to attend that meeting. It can be presented as a cost for the meeting, but it needs justification on reasonability for that facilitation allowance. For me, as an accountant, audit advisor, I'll look at the facilitation allowance, see if it is something that helps people to get to the venue, it helps them to be able to settle for the meeting, then that will be like exclusive for that training, then I'll consider it as a facilitation allowance, or not mentioning as a facilitation allowance, but the cost for the meeting that has been paid maybe on a flat rate to everyone, or depending on their location, whether they are coming from the same village or they are traveling from away from the region. And then coming to the question from Angel. Hi. Coming to the question from Angel on the deferred revenue, I'd like to share a bit of experience with other NGO where this circumstance happens. When the NGO receives, there could be situations where NGO receive funds towards the end of the year, and it's not possible for that NGO to implement all activities which it had budgeted for that fund. But now it depends on the presentation, the financial statement. If the NGO is able to show that we have this balance at the bank, we have it in our books of accounts, but we also have this commitment in our books of account which relate to this budget, then it can be justified to TRI. I had experience whereby this amount was taxed, but then we submitted our justification to show that the commitments were there, but now these commitments were falling beyond the year end. So the fund was waiting for the commitment to mature so that it can be paid. And if it is going to be taxed, then those commitments, the remaining fund won't be sufficient to cover for the intended commitment. And under that ground, we were able to be considered for not taxing that balance. So all in all, I would say it depends on the mode of presentation. On accounting side, when the financial statement shows the fund which has been received as deferred revenue, but its expenditure have not yet been incurred, but the commitments are there, then the auditor may review that account and put it in the emphasis of matter, for example, to show that there is fund and there is also commitment which amounts to that fund. And those will help in negotiating or discussing further with TRI to consider not taxing that deferred revenue. And then coming to the EJ's question on whether the NGOs are supposed to have EFD machine or not. My understanding is NGO does not give EFD receipt for the grant that they are receiving. They will have to acknowledge receipt of the fund, but I haven't come across the law which requires them to give EFD. In case they receive grants or donations, they don't have the EFD machines, the receipt from the EFD machine. But if the NGO, which is also allowed, has some supplies that it gives out and it receives income, or maybe it has disposal of assets that it sells and it receives income, it has something that generates income or generates revenue apart from grant, it will need to have the EFD receipt so as to acknowledge the receipts of the fund which are not grant. So that's all I could share, but I bring it back to you, May, and if someone has contribution, this is a tax talk, so feel free to contribute. Thank you.
Okay, asante sana for the response. Angel, you have your raised hand, so I'm hoping you have a follow-up question. Karibu. After Angel, I would like to welcome Shailesh. Shailesh Karibu. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties pronouncing your wonderful name. So Angel, follow-up question, then Shailesh, then David.
Okay, thank you, May. So, okay, Berthasia, thank you so much for the contribution. So, the deferred revenue issue is simply we can say that it's the issue of best judgment by the TRA auditor who is auditing the accounts. Yeah, right? If I can conclude that if you get somebody who does not understand, because in literally the law does not allow you to carry over funds. So it's the issue of a person who is auditing to understand that these are funds that have to be carried over to the next year.
Because it may not be practical in some circumstances to return the money back to the donor and then take it again in January. So it's upon the NGO to prove and justify why they have that balance and why it is a deferred revenue. Because much as the law is stating, is prohibiting, as you're saying, to keep the balance, but the circumstance can happen that the balance is there and then the commitments are clearly seen, and I don't see why it should not be justified for someone to understand and consider it not to be taxed.
Okay, Mr. Shailesh Karibu, welcome, and then we'll have David, and then Lindsay. After that, we'll give Berthasia a moment to respond to the 3 questions.
Good evening, everybody. Hello.
Yes, hello, we can hear you.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to add on point of EFD, issuing of the EFD for the NGOs. As I read the regulation, it says that a person who supplies goods, renders services, or receives payment in respect of goods supplied or services rendered shall issue fiscal receipt or fiscal invoice using electronic fiscal device. Or it is not receiving any payment in respect of goods and services rendered. So I would guess the NGOs would receive donations, would receive grant, would receive membership subscription. I think membership subscription and such kind of income would not fall under goods supplied or services rendered. So I believe that NGOs should not be having an electronic fiscal device to issue the fiscal receipts. So I just wanted to contribute that.
All right. Thank you so much for the reference of the law and that amazing contribution. Thank you so much, Mr. Shailesh. I hope I'm right with the pronunciation.
Yes,
welcome,
it's
David.
Perfectly okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Good
evening. Good evening, David.
Okay. I just have a small question, and this is on the validity of the charitable status, the exemption. When one is granted, is it for life, or there's a renewal application, maybe based on the project underway or whatever circumstance?
one is going through at that particular period. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, David. Mlenzi karibu, then we'll let Berthasia respond to both questions. Mlenzi, just unmute your mic and ask, or just give us your contribution. Okay, as we wait for Mlenzi to be ready, Berthasia, maybe you can respond to David. Then after that, we'll have Roger.
All right. Just a few seconds. Let me cite the reference for that.
Okay, as we wait, are you ready? Okay, as we wait for Madam Berthasia to cite the response, are you ready? Or should we take another question?
No, I'm ready. I can okay. Respond.
Okay, then respond. Then we'll have Roger next.
All right. The charitable status is not something that is granted forever and with unlimited time. The commissioner will grant the charitable status, but he has the right to revoke it in case it's not used for the intended purpose, or the NGO which had been doing charitable activities is no longer doing charitable activities. So when the charitable status is granted, the notice that the commissioner is giving should be specific. It states the background or the reason as to why that charitable status has been given to that NGO. So among the things, it will say that it is doing certain activities. So if those activities are no longer done, then it means it's no longer valid. If there is a foreseeable period that these activities are done, the notice will also give the foreseeable period which it will be valid. I wanted to cite the Tax Administration Act where the commissioner specifies those conditions, but I'll take a few minutes to get it here. But in brief, it can be revoked, or it can automatically become invalid if the conditions given on the notice are no longer holding. Thank you.
Okay, Mlenzi, are you in a position to ask your question? Okay, let's move on to Roger. Roger Karibu. After Roger, we'll take Angela, then Madam Berthasia will respond to both questions. Karibu, Roger.
Hi, good evening. Nina swali kwenye AMT, Alternative Minimum Tax. Ile adjustment ya 25%, it is an adjustment, unapata deduction, and over time, losses zako zitakuwa accumulated for 3 years, AMT atiki. So if AMT pays losses, kwa sababu singe mnazo,
Sorry, Roger, you are breaking. I don't know, Berthasia, have you heard this question?
No, I struggled to get it. If you can repeat, please.
Okay. Roger, please repeat the question. We'll call a break.
The AMT, Alternative Minimum Tax. Unanisikia?
Yes.
Yes. So, ile deduction at 25%, kupata charitable road. Over time, ita carry forward process zako, AMT itakuja kukiki. Sasa, usinge ile deduction, manake usinge kuwa kwenye position ya kwenda kwenye AMT. So, is AMT going to be applicable based on your deduction unaoipata? And is it correct to pay AMT based on just which by law are deducted?
Have you got this question now, Madam Berthasia?
Help me to put it clear, please.
Honestly, it is also breaking in my part. Loja, unaweza kuitype kwenye chat room?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, please. Okay, thank you. We have Angela, then we have Angela. We'll take a question from Angela, then we have Evans Matthew.
Okay, so it's not a question. I just would like to add on the addition of time limit for the charitable status. So right now, they used to give it for, like when they give it to you, it doesn't have time limit. But like just, I think last month we got a private ruling, and it was even for 5 years. So I think from now they've started to like give a time limit. I think after 5 years you have to renew. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that update. Evans Matthew, karibu.
Good evening, everyone. My question is, if maybe an NGO was granted a charitable status and during the course of time it went on and established a school, maybe a secondary school or a college, will the charitable status also cover the school or the college? Thank you.
Karibu, Madam Berthasia.
Asante sana. That is clear. It won't cover that the business that NGO is doing. You know, like an NGO can be doing the charitable activities, but also it may come at a time where it goes into commercial activities or it goes to other activities which are no longer charitable. So if they got the charitable status for the charity activity that they were doing, and now they have opened a school, that charitable status will not apply to the school, because the purpose for which the commissioner issued the charitable status is not that new activity is not among the purpose that the charitable status was issued for. So it won't be valid for that. It won't be applicable to the school.
Okay, we have a comment from Mlenzi Selemani in the chat room. He says, Section 64, subsection 7 of the Tax Administration Act, if the charitable organization wishes to save funds for the projects to be conducted next year, should apply to the Commissioner General. It has to be approved by the Commissioner General, otherwise it will be taxable income. I think it goes back to the point where you have to justify this income. And then we have a question from Roger Minja. Yeah, his question is 25% deduction will lead to losses being carried forward, and after 3 years the losses of the AMT will kick in. Is AMT applicable? So that was his question, Berthasia. I hope you got it now.
Oh, let me read through the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Allow me to respond to that later.
Okay.
But now I'd like to also add on the area where the former question is coming from regarding the private ruling from the commissioner. If you cite on the section 13 of the Income Tax Act, subsection 3, it says that the private ruling or the class ruling, it shall A, set out the matter ruled on, identify the tax laws, period, and arrangement to which the ruling applies, and any assumption that affects the ruling. And B states, in case of a private ruling, identify the applicant and his taxpayer identity number. And C, in case of the class ruling, okay, we can leave that one. So A and B states clearly that when the commissioner is giving the ruling, it will be specific in terms of period, as the other contributor has said, for 5 years. And then it will state the assumptions that he has used. So it also gives the arrangement to which the ruling will apply. So this circumstance, if they remain constant, it will be valid, but then if they change, it will not be valid. And when you go further to see that the part B, which talks about identifying the applicant and his tax, the TIN number, then when they open the school, I think they are going to have another TIN for that, and then it will be, it won't be within the scope of the private ruling given earlier. Thank you.
Okay, so our session as advertised and usually ends at 9 sharp. So before we end the session, I would like, for those who joined the session later, after we began, so our organization is Tanzania Tax Awareness and Research Organization, Chitaro. We have these weekly webinars, Tax Talks with Chitaro, where we engage experts in taxation to come and talk about a certain particular topic. So it's every Thursday from 8 to 9 p.m. We invite an expert to talk about this. And the reason behind Tax Talks with Chitaro is, I'd like to start with a quote, a very famous quote from President Benjamin Franklin, where he said, "Nothing is certain except death and taxes." So we want to create an environment where we constantly update each other about laws, regulations, better practices, what is out there, exchange knowledges. So this is the main aim of this platform. You can follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, it's Chitaro_TZ. In LinkedIn and Facebook is Tanzania Tax Awareness and Research Organization, together with YouTube. Before we end the session, CPA BERTHASIA, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, the time you took to be with us and to take us through the topic of today. So if you have anything to add, karibu sana, just a minute.
Asante sana, May. Yes, I do have something to add before we end our session. First of all, I thank everyone who took time to participate to this tax talk, and it was my pleasure to be here and share what we were able to share with you all. I believe we're not able to answer each and everything. There will always be something to discuss or to brainstorm further. So you can reach us through African Mark Services social media, and our website is also African Mark Services, and we'll surely get back to you. And also I'd like to give disclaimer to all that we have shared. These are personal opinion. These are not for the firm that I'm coming from, which is African Mark. And also this is not the conclusive opinion on how you're going to treat your tax matters. You should always feel free to consult and get specific opinion on each circumstance that you need to have tax advice. So thank you so much, May. Thank you.
Asante. Okay, so for those asking about our WhatsApp group, yes, we do have a WhatsApp group. So I'll give you my contact. Just check me inbox and WhatsApp. I'll add you to the group. So my number is 0764 773 794 0764 773 794. I hope you got the number. Just send me a text and I'll add you in our WhatsApp group. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. We'll have so many sessions like this. And BERTHASIA, thank you so much for being with us once again. And we hope to have you more and more in these sessions. I'm sure we'll have more questions about NGOs, and maybe you can take us through next time. We maybe can discuss that. Other than that, I wish you all a good night. Happy Friday na kwanza weekend vizuri. So good night.